acknowledge the land that we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, I always get stuck on this one, the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I would like to thank our panelists for being here with us today. I think you're going to have a really good time listening to them. I'll throw it over to our moderator, Robyn Citizen.
Thanks, James. I think we're going to go around first, and everybody will introduce themselves and talk about their relationship to short film and why they're an expert to be here. My name is Robyn Citizen. I'm the director of festival programming and Cinematheque at the Toronto International Film Festival. But in 2019, I was the co-programmer for shorts with my wonderful colleague, Jason Anderson. So I've done a deep dive into short films. And we were lucky enough this year to see a bunch of our short filmmakers come back with their first features. So seeing that trajectory has been really great. Let's start with Micah.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. So my name is Micah. I am the programmer for Canadian Reflections on CBC, which is Canada's longest running short film showcase. Really excited to be here and answer some questions.
Hi, I'm Ashleigh Rains. I'm a producer, an actor, and festival director at the Canadian Film Fest. And I began my career in film as an actor doing short films. I produce short films, and at the Canadian Film Fest, we program features and shorts. 100% of our content is Canadian, and we screen about 40 short films every year, in addition to features.
Hi, my name is Nayani. I'm a director, writer, sometimes reluctant producer. And I just had my first feature at TIFF, and it was an incredible experience. Been through every possible program that Toronto can offer over the last 12 years, trying to learn because I didn't go to film school. And also, with regards to shorts, I was on the board of Breakthroughs Film Festival, which is a short film festival dedicated to women and gender diverse filmmakers for 4 years. And I will say that in terms of shorts, I've made a lot of shorts that never saw the light of day or nobody ever got to see. And I want to talk about how valuable that is as well. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Erica Orofino. I'm a writer-director. I actually have a short film screening at this festival tomorrow. I am a resident at the Canadian Film Centre in the Director's Lab, and I've been making short films for the last few years, and I have my first feature film in development.
Thank you. I think I'm going to start with the filmmakers and producers on the stage and just really talk about once you've made a short, like say the production is over and you're wrapping up and your post-production, what are the next steps from there when it comes to festival strategy, distribution, other plans? Do you want to talk a little bit about that journey?
Okay, let's start. So I guess so hang on, can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, you want to talk about your journey of what happens once you've finished all of the production parts of the short?
Yeah, so after you finish, I feel like it's loaded because there's all this PR stuff that goes into it. Like you have to put together sort of a package that can sell or make your short film be something that people will want to see. So you need to make sure that you have unit stills, that you have a press kit ready, that you have a long synopsis, a short synopsis, bios for all the key crew, behind the scenes photos of yourself directing or your producer producing. And it's kind of like this little puzzle that all comes together that is this perfect package that will sell through the film. For myself, I have not had a film purchased for distribution yet, but for festivals, there's kind of key art that festivals will ask for. They'll ask for a lot of this PR stuff. And what I like to do is, right after I finish making a short, is make a list of all the festivals that I'm aiming for, or I think that the film will work really well in these festivals. And sometimes I'll even email the festival directors and just say like introduce myself and say like, hey, I'm submitting this film. It's about this. I would love it if you could take a look at it. Sometimes like adding a personal touch to festival submissions really goes a long way. But of course, like I feel like this is an answer that can go on forever because there's so many things that you can do to get your film seen. But yeah, I feel like those are some basics.
I think a lot of folks focus, as you should, on production and getting through production and making sure the film gets made, but I don't think enough folks, especially with short films, but even with features or first-time features, think about what happens when it's done and you want people to see it. And I think that's a conversation that we need to continue to have more and more is like, even when you get a little bit of funding, like putting a little bit aside for that, you know, completion phase, for that marketing and distribution phase, because things like a, you know, publicist or some kind of PR help or, you know, somebody who can help you put together, I mean, I've put a lot of decks together on Canva, like not, you know, with anybody's help because we didn't have money, but those kind of hard skills of like learning how to, you know, prep for all the things that you said, like having the package, thinking ahead about what materials you'll need that can make your life a lot easier when you get to that stage, is like a conversation that I feel we need to have more of, because we prep filmmakers to make the films, but we don't prep them with the tools to like what happens when you want people to see your film and for it to get out there. And I think that's really valuable and important, especially for writer-directors, like to sometimes think like a producer, because it's easy to be like, I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I just want to work on my work. Cool, but you're also part of the process of making sure people see that beautiful work that you work so hard on. And I think that's a conversation we need to have more of, is like prepping ahead of time, even from the beginning, thinking about where do I, you know, and it's not even that everyone wants it to be at a festival or get distribution. Some people want to make a film and they want it to like be online and go viral, whatever the trajectory you want for your film, just being clear about that from the beginning, because I think that helps you prep through the whole process to get to that point.
I think that's a great point, and I think I learned that probably like the hard way of like, I made my short and then like my first short, I made it and then didn't know what to do with it or where to place it. So now as a producer, if I'm doing a short film, that conversation starts in the beginning. That with the team, it's what's the intention with this short? Is it, you know, I really want to hone my like boots on the ground producing skills and really understand like how production works. Is it that and you're doing it with your friends, or is it cultivating like the director's voice and like what are the objectives of the creative? But then also short films can have an extremely long life in your career as a filmmaker. Something that you shot with, like, you know, over 2 days on a weekend could be part of your life for years. Short films travel, so conversations I have at the beginning is like, what's the intention? When we're done production, is it going to festivals? Is it, you know, to go viral online? Is it for distribution? Is it awards? Am I using this short to open the doors to a feature film? Or am I using this to establish track record with Telefilm or track record with Canada Council? So really like understanding and getting everyone on the same page where this film could go and how we're gonna get it there. We start there. And then working back, it's like, okay, now we need to develop our marketing. Well, the marketing starts in the beginning as well. It's getting the stills. It's making sure, you know, understanding your keys, getting the bios, you know, hiring a publicist like Ingrid at Gap PR, who's fantastic, and really building out your plan and your strategy from the beginning, from script.
That's really interesting to hear. I mean, I think on the programmer side, like we come in kind of where these preparations end. I wonder if we want to talk a little bit about what we look for in short films as a programmer.
Sure, I can talk a bit about what we look for at Canadian Reflections. We are very open. We air at 11:30 at night, so we can kind of push the boundaries a little bit, especially for CBC, which is great. We are super open. We can look at dramas, comedies, experimental shorts, animated shorts. I think really the goal of the program is to be able to provide a space for filmmakers to showcase their work. We're really interested in finding stories that are diverse. And when we say diverse, we mean it in the broadest terms possible. We're talking about representation from the 2S LGBTQ plus communities, racialized communities, the disabled community, and then also representation from across Canada. A lot of the times, programming feels a little bit Toronto-centric, but we're really open to seeing shorts from coast to coast to coast. And I think, one thing to really keep in mind for Canadian Reflections in particular is there has to be proof that it is a Canadian film. So we really require a CRTC certificate. And I always like to say that off the top because, there was a film once that we were really interested in acquiring, and the team was Canadian, and, we thought we would be able to move forward, but they actually didn't qualify for a CRTC certificate, unfortunately. It was somebody on their team who hadn't received their permanent residence yet, and then unfortunately we couldn't acquire the short. So that's something I like to say off the top too. Like, it does need to be Canadian, and I know sometimes those CRTC certificates take quite a while to get. So work on that as soon as possible.
At Canadian Film Fest, likewise, our mandate for short films is good stories. So it sounds broad, but it's also specific through the programmer's lens when we look at content. We want to program films from across the country and from diverse perspectives. We have a gender parity mandate as well at the festival, so we make sure that our films, our shorts, and our features, meet those initiatives and those programming numbers. And then specifically at our festival, we have time requirements, for example, where we don't program shorts that exceed 20 minutes in length. So those kind of considerations are things that we look at as well through programming. But first and foremost is good story.
The same at TIFF, we do Canadian and international shorts, but because so much production in Canada is like Quebec and Ontario-centric, we often, most years anyway, there's a concerted effort to make sure that we're getting the actual full spectrum of what's happening in the Canadian short film landscape. But I also want to talk about timing because, I'm very much about this make short film short again thing. Like a long short film is great, and there's some short films that honestly need to be 40 minutes, but we had to finally, we were accepting short films up to 60 minutes at one point, and now it's like 49 and under, just because we wanted to be in line with some of the European film festivals, which actually do have a better infrastructure for longer short films. But really, when I was co-programming shorts and we were getting 40-minute shorts, that's a decision that involves there's 3 other short films that we cannot fit in the program now if we take this 40-minute short. And honestly, the sweet spot tends to be around 12 to 18 minutes when it comes to what a short film does best, which is really drop you into that space and then take you out. The other thing content-wise that I want to talk about a little bit is proof of concept shorts, because I think all film festivals and short exhibitions get a lot of that, because it's filmmakers who've decided they want this to be kind of like their calling card for their feature, which is great. But I would say you have to make sure your short film stands on its own, because you can really tell a just raw proof of concept short and it feels unfinished. It feels like a long trailer. And I would just say be careful with that. And my favorite example is Joyland, Saim Sadiq's film. In 2019, we programmed it, knew it was going to Venice. It's a brilliant short film, and it feels absolutely like a self-contained world. Like, has a beginning, middle, end. You want to know more about the characters, but you don't feel abrupt. And then he developed it into a film, also honestly like a masterpiece debut film, and adapted from the short. But it also doesn't feel like a feature that was stretched short. And I think for me, the example of a feature that feels like a stretched short is, because I like horror films. So it's Lights Out. So if anybody remembers that short that went viral, and it was like 2 minutes, and it was like a perfect short. It's like it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It scared the hell out of me when I was watching it online. And then they made a full-length movie, and I was like, what is this? Like the entire reason for being of the short film was like, it's this jump scare that you're just working up to. How are you making that into a feature? So some of those, I guess, more substantive questions about the content are really important.
I think that's a really great point and note about the difference between a proof of concept and a short film, and how they're used as tools. Yep.
And you actually said something else that reminded me of something to share too. For Canadian Reflections, we can acquire films that are between 15 seconds and 21 minutes in length. But I think I agree that sweet spot really sits between 10 and 15 minutes.
So you two have a feature film, and then you're working on your feature film. What is that process? Because your feature was not based on a previous short. I'm not sure what feature you're working on, but how do you get there from being a short filmmaker to finding funding, finding supporters for your feature project?
To be honest, I think it's important to share. I think you're told a lot of the time, you've got to have a successful short or a couple of shorts, and then someone's going to trust you and give you money for your feature. And that didn't happen to me. I think we had a script that ended up being our feature, This Place. I had done shorts. I've worked in the industry for 12 years. I've been in and out of the CBC. I've worked as a producer, a visual researcher. I have lots of jobs there. And I'd taken contracts. So I had relationships and throughout the industry, which I think has contributed a lot to being able to find funding later on at this point. I had done a lot of shorts, like I said, with my friends on the weekends, peers, trying to practice and learn, and things that I'm really proud of and that were in my reel at some point, but were never actually released to the world, and just sit on hard drives on my desk. And I learned a lot in that process. I think in some ways we got lucky when we got funding for our feature, but I also think that people had come to trust some of the folks on the team because we had been working in the industry for so long. So I didn't take, I guess, what has become a traditional route of doing a successful short and then doing a feature. And actually, while I was working on my feature, I was actually working on my first fully funded shorts at the CFCN with a project with a writer-actor, Kylie May, and I directed someone else's writing. And so all of it kind of came together for me at the same time, which I don't think happens very often. In terms of funding, for me personally, it was all the relationships of working in and out of the broadcaster, being involved with arts councils, being on juries for arts councils. It was 10 years of just getting to know everybody and building not a network, but real relationships with folks that when push comes to shove and we have no money left we're moving through production, you get a little bit of money from telefilm, which never is there's just never enough money. That's also it. You just have to make peace with, at every stage, it's not enough. Being able to get funding along the way, because we didn't have all of our financing in place for our feature at the beginning. We had enough, what we thought was enough to get through production. It was not. And then, we had the CBC on board. CBC Films came on board for us, Ontario Arts Council, 2 private funders, one of which was one of the actors in the film that I didn't know had a lot of money, and then was very thankful had a lot of money later. It was just pulling in a lot of favors, and all of those meetings, I would have never met with the CBC unless it was through someone, right? It was a relationship and someone vouching for me. So that's something I think is really important is, again, we get in our bubbles of actually creating, which is really important. It's why we do the work. But I think that as director, writer, producers, producers are different because they're always doing that, but I think director writers or, director slash writer, or if you're just doing one or the other, I think you need to make sure that you're building those relationships. People have to trust you as an artist. People want to know who they're supporting. I think people will be like, oh, that's beautiful work, but I know nothing about them. And I think there's so much value in people being part of your story and your journey. And then as you move along, those folks want to help you and support you where they can. And you just never know where anyone's going to end up either. People are moving around all over the place in this industry. And someone who was, your peer somewhere ends up being an executive somewhere else 5 years later. And I think it's really important to build those relationships outside of just following the timeline or the pipeline of short to feature.
That's such a good answer. I feel like I have so much to say too about this because I don't think there is really like a perfect trajectory anymore. It really seems like everyone's kind of on their own journey, and there are so many ways to get to where you want to be. And I can speak to mine, but because I also was going to say like mine's not the typical trajectory, but I feel like that's kind of the case for everyone, especially now. There are so many ways to make things and to get, like it's not just a festival route anymore. You can have something go viral on TikTok and then there you go, your career is made. Like there's just so many ways that you can go about getting people to see your stuff. For me, I made short film. I went to film school, but I did not get to make anything in film school because I was not in the production stream. So I wrote, like I was a screenwriter for like 4 years, like a student of screenwriting for 4 years. When I got out, I made my first short film, a genre film called Fantôme, and it was it did okay, like it did relatively well, but none of my shorts have ever been to like any of the big 5 or 6 festivals. But I kept making shorts. Like I just kept making shorts. I've made like 3-minute shorts, 5-minute shorts, comedies, horrors, dramedies. Like I've made a lot of short films. None of them have been to any of the big festivals. But somewhere along the line, people started to get to know like who I am as a filmmaker or as a collaborator. I've also PA'd on my friends' sets. I've done craft. I've driven cast to and from. Like I've done, I've worn so many hats, and I feel like the two like universal rules if you want to be a writer director is like meet people and keep directing stuff. Even if it's on your freaking phone, even if it's on, like whatever means you have $500 and you have a friend who wants to make something, make something. If you feel like your idea is really good and no one else thinks it is, well, maybe you should probably like ask them why and like maybe try to like, listen to feedback. But what I'm trying to say is like, if you feel like if you have a vision, you have a good idea, and you don't have a lot of money to make something, make it anyway and try to get people to see it however you can. You don't need a lot of money. I did not come from money. I did not come from a filmmaking family. And I'm also still on my journey, but I got into the CFC, which you've done the CFC? Yeah, okay, so you were, okay. So I'm at the CFC now, and the CFC saw my short that I just finished, the one that's screening at this festival, called She Keeps Me, and they liked it, and now I'm at the CFC, and this has opened up so many doors for me. I just finished my last short, and I have a grant from Canada Arts Council making another short, and through the CFC, I'm developing my feature film, and I have some EPs that are on, and so that's like the ball is rolling. But I guess what I'm trying to say is keep going and meet people. And I love what you said about you never know who is going to be the next exec. Like, just be nice to people and respect each other and work on your friends' stuff.
I wanted to say one more thing is like, I think we underestimate it's important and okay to be strategic and have foresight. I think like it feels like you're planning and I don't know, I think it triggers something in a lot of humans where you feel like you're being icky, but it's really important, like being on the breakthroughs, board for 4 years was like so incredible because I got to see all these films come in and see how people were responding to it, see what people were saying, and you, Robyn, you were on the board with me. Paige, who's at the CBC, was on the board. So you also meet these people who then I was like, I'm going through stress, and I like email Robyn. I'm like, I just need to talk to somebody, you know. Or I email Paige, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my career, you know. It's just like being strategic, and I did that strategically. I was like, I'm gonna join this board if they allow me on it. I'm gonna interview so I can meet people, so I can learn, so I can be in community with folks who are doing all the work that I hope to do, and who can be beautiful sounding boards and mirrors, and you know, create a community that we can have conversations constantly. And I think being strategic is really key. Like even taking contract at the CBC, I'm like, well, I'm gonna meet all these execs. I don't work in unscripted. I worked a lot in it then, but those folks like will vouch for me to other folks when they're asking questions, you know. And I think it's really important, especially for creative folks, which I mean like directors and writers, to be strategic, because sometimes we leave that all up to the producers because we think, that's not who I am. I don't deal in business affairs, or I don't want to deal with legal. And I'm like, director writers need to deal with legal, protect your work. That's one thing as well. But making sure that you understand that side of it and you are operating with the business of it in mind, because, and I don't mean to make millions of dollars. I just mean to be able to think about where is your film going and how is it leading to all the other beautiful work you want to create. Strategy and foresight are really critical.
Yeah, and I love what you said about festivals not being the only kind of pathway, because I think for shorts, that's the, you know, that's what people believe, because it doesn't have the traditional distribution path of like a feature film. But I love that Micah's here because it's not a festival pathway, and I'm kind of curious how films come to Canadian Reflection.
I want to know too.
They come directly to me. The short answer of it all. Yeah, we are very open with how people can reach out, and you know, our emails are pretty easy at the CBC. It's micah.kernan@cbc.ca. You know, sometimes there's some conversations internally about, you know, what we have on our catalog, what makes the most sense to add right now. But yeah, like I said before, we're very, very open. And even if, you know, there have been filmmakers who have sent me, you know, a number of films that just don't work at the time. But, you know, to your point, it's about building relationships too. I really like to set up calls with people when I am going to acquire a short and just get to know you. Like, what else are you working on? You know, I also am the development manager for comedy and drama. So, you know, I'm very open to meeting with producers and writers and getting a sense of, you know, what else they're looking to do. Because, you know, I know shorts are amazing, but a lot of the times people will come to me and say, you know, there's only so many places I can go to earn money. And I know some people have, you know, goals of writing on series or on features. And I like to be, you know, a sounding board for people, to be able to provide as much information, you know, about the network as possible. So yeah, I guess everything comes to me. Comedies, dramas, and shorts.
And from a festival's perspective, and Ashleigh, you can speak to this as well, but we definitely, I feel like all festival directors talk to each other in different ways. So the festival strategy of it is really important, because you don't just want to apply to the top 5 or 6 festivals. And if you don't get in, say, well then, like, that's it, you know, that was my shot. There's plenty of short films that we have programmers that are always looking for stuff, and programmers have other programming jobs with other festivals. And so they will see a short somewhere and say, oh, I saw this here at this local festival or the smaller festival, like, I think it might be right for you, and then we'll take a look at it, and if it's not right for us, we'll pass it on to other festivals. We'll say, like, you know, this might be right for you, or if it's something that's almost there, but for some reason we're not taking it, it goes back to relationships. Like, we'll reach out and say, this is some pretty strong work, it's not gonna work for us this year, but like, just let us know what you're working on next, and we can probably find something for you. It's also a numbers game, honestly, because you know, there's only so many festivals you'll be able to attend, even if you apply and get in, and you have to look at what the festivals are offering in terms of guest support, and that can be different depending on where you apply. But we see so many short films, and the personal touch is important, but not to overdo that too, because I've definitely had people like chase me down and say like, oh, I see from your Facebook you went to university there, don't do that. But, but it's totally fine to say, hi, I wrote this film, and I directed this film, and it's about this. Take a look at it. Occasionally, people request feedback, and we can give it. Just be sure when you open that door, you want to walk through it, because sometimes the feedback might not be what you expect or you want to hear. But yeah, how about you, Ashleigh?
Yeah. I think for that reason, we don't offer feedback on shorts at Canadian Film Fest. But I will say, if we don't program a short, it is not personal. There's so many considerations when you're putting a festival program together. It's time, it's, representation, it's geography, it's, how themes, how they relate to each other, how the films speak to each other. There's so many things on the table when we sit down and actually try and put the festival together. So yes, it's never personal, and if it feels personal, think before you hit that send button, because it is a small industry, and you remember the people who were not kind or ungracious or aggressive, and that's rare, but it does happen. But then also, like on the flip side, what Erica was saying earlier, like I love it when filmmakers email me and they say, hi, I just submitted my short, I submitted my feature, I love your festival because I'd love to be a part of it. That doesn't mean that when I look at it, I'm like, that person sent a really nice email, so I'm going to program. But it's nice to have context as well. Like I do carry that in to viewing, but it doesn't sway the decision. But then, it's like, as Robyn said, maybe it's not right for the festival this year, but I'm gonna keep my eye on that filmmaker, see what they're doing, see where else they're screening, what they're creating, and foster relationships as well.
We actually have an internal tag at TIFF when we know we're not going to accept something for whatever reason, but it's a filmmaker to watch. It's like a filmmaker to watch tag that we click on our side in Film Freeway, so we can better track people that we want to, just keep an eye on what they're doing. And I would also say, like, it's also a content numbers game. So we don't get a lot of comedy shorts, because I think when people apply to bigger festivals, they think we want like super drama, like, like bleak stuff. But that's not true. So sometimes if you have a comedy short and, like we need more comedies, or like we need something to lighten up this particular program, you're gonna have a slightly better shot. We get a lot of coming of age films, a lot. And so there's a lot of really great coming of age films we just don't have space for, because I really do feel like filmmakers are part of the zeitgeist. And so they, when you see a certain theme, a lot of filmmakers are hitting on that theme in any given year. And it's just kind of, it's not planned. It's not like people are trying to hit a trend. It's before it even becomes a trend. So like 3 years ago, we had all these films about pandemics. Like there wasn't a pandemic. It was all these people in production making films about, worldwide global diseases. And so you get these years where all of a sudden everybody's doing the same thing, and not everybody can get in on that one theme, unfortunately. If you have questions, I want to open up the floor to any questions as well. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, you need mic.
We're recording this, so I want to make sure.
Nice to see a panel of women. Thank you for being here. My question, as somebody who is a fan of shorts, and from the perspective of also programming in a festival, when you consider submitting your film, this is for the filmmakers, when you consider submitting your film to a festival, do you consider niche festivals as well? Because I think we've talked about the big festivals, and people focus on that, but we have Shorts Not Pants, and it's from all over the world, and we see a variety of themes, so it's not always the same kind of content. So I'm wondering about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think learning the strategy of it has been a big learning curve for me. I've been submitting to festivals since 2015, I would say, for different projects, and it's been hit and miss all over the place. But at first, again, I think I made the mistake. I was like, I want it to be, when you're younger, you're like, I want it to be in all the big film festivals, or I only know these film festivals. It's also like how much knowledge I didn't have about how many film festivals there are in the world, and even just locally, even in Toronto itself. And so I think at this point, yeah, like we're submitting a short right now where the entire team is like Black and South Asian folks, and our cast, our crew for the most part. And so like it just happened to be that way through the CFC. And so you know, we're submitting to festivals that we know value those stories. Like we had submitted it to TIFF, and then thankfully the feature got in, but the short didn't, which that would be too much. That'd be overkill. And so, you know, now I'm like, okay, well, let's submit to all the festivals that we know would consider it and then look at it carefully and give it the space that it deserves, and also that are great festivals. Like Black Star Film Festival in Philadelphia is a festival that I've been to for many years, and I've been part of their programming, and we're submitting there because they obviously program Black, Brown, and Indigenous films, and so that's going to be a dream if we get in there. And it's also a well-respected, beautiful. It's actually one of the best film festivals I've ever been to in terms of like community and audience engagement. And we're submitting to, you know, South Asian film festivals that are focused on racialized folks. So niche for me at this point, especially with shorts, is really important because you also want to go where your film is loved, like, and you deserve to feel that, you know. And so sometimes it gets lost in the bigger film festivals versus like when you like look at these smaller film festivals that have a lot of respect and a lot of community and audience engagement, it almost makes more sense to even go there and be able to have an audience engage with your film in the way that you want and the way that you deserve. So yeah, I love niche film festivals, but I learned that over like way too long of a period to value that. Yeah.
I'm a really big genre person, so I really like I make films typically that are in the horror realm or like have some horror in them. Not this one, but just generally. So I also try to look for like the festivals where I think my film will be appreciated the most, but also like what community do I want to tap into? Like if like I also really like festivals that are run by women or that have some kind of like a community wow, how am I not able to put this into a sentence? I try to find the festivals where I know I can build community and where I will be able to meet people that I can work with or that I would just want in my sphere. I also try to hit up like Toronto festivals because again, for community. And I agree about the like niche festivals are, yeah, it's really like when you're watching your film in an audience and everyone's reacting the way that you are hoping or the way that you've like planned, and it's because like, oh, it's a bunch of horror fans, like they get this, they love this. That's the best feeling. So yeah, I love.
It's also
niche
audience building. Like
yeah,
if you want to think about it long term, like, you know, when I see films that have like short films that have like 30, 40 laurels, I'm like, wow, they just built audience in all these different places, right? And people who are gonna support their work and look out for their work. Like we underestimate, like I think as a whole, how beautiful that is, how you can actually build an audience and build a community. And also going to niche festivals is where I've met community, like not just in Toronto. I don't want my community of peers just to be in Toronto. I want to be able to connect with folks that are in other cities and other places. That's how I learn and grow in a very particular way. And so being at those niche festivals, attending them virtually or in person, has also helped me build relationships across imagined borders and have sustained relationships, you know, across time and space, and I really value that as well.
Yeah. Also, some of these niche festivals have awards. Yeah. So, I mean, if your short film's competing with fewer shorts and you're getting like the best screenplay or like, you know, best short film, that actually does carry weight for you to take that film to other festivals. So just for that reason alone, it's pretty good strategy. Yes. I keep forgetting about the microphones.
Hello, two questions. Just to elaborate on what you just said. So I'm producing different short films and spending a lot of time on the film freeway. A lot of money too. And so my question is for maybe programmers, festival programmers, what's the actual weight of these selections of awards? Because it seems for me, and I receive a lot of ads for a festival which seems more like pay to win or thing like this, and it's really difficult to try to see, okay, I'm going in that festival, I have a chance. Is it a chance, or is it maybe something which will carry us if we are signing anything? That's the first question. And I will have another question, but based on the CRTC a certificate you had before, but that's next.
For your first question, I would say you really do need to do your research about the festivals. I think in Toronto there's like over 100 festivals or something. It's a festival-heavy city, and some are kind of pay to play. So I could just recommend doing your research, because obviously those awards aren't going to carry the same weight to other festivals. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else I can say except for that, except for you really have to research, talk to other filmmakers who have had their films at smaller festivals, feel out what seems credible to you, and then even, reach out to those festival directors to get a sense of what the festival's about, and if it's like a theme-centric festival, or if it's like a identity-based festival, or if it's just like a local-based festival or a genre festival. Sometimes in just the communication, you can feel what makes the most sense and what's legit and what's not.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in too. I think for Canadian Reflections, I feel like I say this over and over, but we're so open. I'm very interested in getting films that have done a great festival run, that have some awards, but then, there are films that I've been able to acquire that, as you said, have been shot on a cell phone, right? Like there's still space, and there's still an interest, and there's still an audience for me anyways in what I'm able to program.
I would agree with what Robyn said. Do your research and check out the history, the track record of the festival. Is it, like, for example, a Canadian Screen Award qualifying festival? Do the prizes, are they more than a laurel? Do they carry something with them that can set you up for your next project or for financing? So really, I'd be weary of the pay for award festivals, and there's certainly a lot of them, pay for play and pay for the awards, but yeah, reach out to the festival.
I hope it's okay if I jump
Yep.
in. Just I've been on Film Freeway from like the beginning. I would say if you don't see a name anywhere, if there's no festival director listed, if it's just an email address that says like info at, I would avoid it. Like you want to know there's a person there, and you want to know if you can trust that person. So there are a number of festivals, every city has them, where it's like the Toronto something festival. If there's no name and there's no person, I would say don't waste your money there. That's just a quick
And like
tip.
even if you consider, like, there are such small niche film festivals that even like pay artists, they pay them a screening fee, who don't have a lot of money. And then when you hear about people who are asking you for pay to play, you just start to realize, like, I think the ethics of it and like the integrity of it is very clear, and I feel like that's something to remember and trust your gut. Yeah.
Did you have a question about the CRTC certificate?
Hi, Micah. You mentioned earlier the situation around the CRTC certificate. We wondered if this was a formal element of submitting something to you, or informal. I went through recently on the CBC website to look at requirements in the process. So I'm learning about that today, so I didn't catch that. So if you could just clarify what that is and how important or how formal that is.
Yeah, it's actually one of the requirements for us to be able to program a short. So we really need to be able to prove that it is a Canadian short, because for our licensing with the CRTC, we have to have X amount of numbers of Canadian content per year. So we do actually need to report back to the CRTC. So it is vital to have that proof. So when they come knocking on my door to audit, I'm able to provide that.
Fantastic panel, first of all. I think you all should package yourself as a panel and like move to other festivals. No, you're so great. This is directly for Micah, and speaking of Canadian Reflections, is there, what are the years of how recently a film has been made
Right.
that you're accepting?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was thinking, I was like, there's a vital piece of information I haven't provided here. So we can acquire films that have a production year of 2 years or newer. You know, our mandate really is to be able to showcase the newest content that's out there that Canadians are creating to be able to share with Canadians. So we're wrapping up the end of 2022 already, which is wild. So, you know, most of the films that I'm receiving right now typically have a production year of 2021 or even 2022.
And I would add that that needs to be a really important part of festival strategy as well, because we do have like production date deadlines, and we have to turn away a number of films every year because we received like almost 7,000 submissions last year at TIFF, and over 50% of those were shorts. And there's just only so many films that we can screen, so the eligibility window gets kind of more narrow every year. And it's always a shame when a really good short ends up not being eligible because they just missed the deadline. They could have applied last year or something.
And on that note too, when you're doing your festival strategy, check out the festival's premier status requirements. Some festivals want your short first and won't consider it if it's already played other festivals. So decide, lay out what your top festivals are and understand their premier requirements, so you know how to piece your festival together.
Yeah, spreadsheet is your friend.
It
And
really
starting
is.
early, so you're not like stressed when it's happening. You just, I don't know, I found that like if you start early in the year, or like you're just constantly looking at Film Freeway, you can also like follow the festival and make sure you don't miss a deadline. So I always get emails that are like, this deadline's coming up. I'm like, oh yes, I gotta spend more money. But like, I think being able to have that kind of planning ahead, and like you said, there could be a column that's just like festival status, or this is not so much now because you can deliver the screening copy digitally, but before you had to be like, oh, who do I have to send it to? What kind of thing do I need to get the post house to make? So just making sure it's all in a spreadsheet, and maybe not just on Film Freeway, something that like speaks to how your brain works is really helpful.
And if I can just jump onto what you're saying there, a big part of doing your festival strategy is cost. It is expensive to do a festival run, and depending on the size of the festival run and what your objectives are, it can be very costly. So when I'm doing that, I also lay out the cost. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to cost this much money to submit to festivals. But on that note, I also would say check the festivals where you're submitting, because some festivals provide waivers. Yeah. So at Canadian Film Fest, we do waivers for female, non-binary, and BIPOC filmmakers. So there are no submission fees. So we want, and I mean, if we could waive submission fees entirely, we would, because it can be cost prohibitive to get your films out to festivals.
And those early deadlines, like making sure you know what
Exactly.
the early, regular, late. You don't want to do the late one because it's going to be more expensive. So if you can get it in at the early deadline, you spend less money. Mm-hmm. And you can email programmers, like even
Absolutely.
if they don't offer it on the page. Like we've emailed programmers and they've been very kind, and like where they can, they're like, yeah, you're emailing early enough. Here's a waiver because, you're in a financial situation that's challenging.
Exactly, because your festival submissions sometimes can cost more than your budget.
Which is also when you're applying for Arts Council money or any funding, put that in the budget. Don't just say I need money to export, go to the post-production house, but put a line item in those budgets when you're applying for funding that say I need this amount base for festivals to make sure that people can see the movie.
And there's one other thing that I want to mention too, just talking about when some festivals ask for, the premiere of the film. For me, at Canadian Reflections, we actually ask for the broadcast and digital premiere and for the first year to be exclusive on all linear and digital platforms. However, there have been films that come to me, as soon as they're done and, I'm really interested in acquiring it, we'll have an acquisition license start date a number of months down the road. But I'm in constant communication with the filmmaker. So if, there's a festival coming up that they just found out that they want to be in, but that festival will not allow, a short that has had a broadcast premiere, I can be very flexible and work with the filmmaker. So, I can think of one recently. They came to me and were like, oh my goodness, we got into this festival that we were so excited about, but it's before or it's after the premiere date. We had enough time, so I was able to reschedule a couple months out so that they were still able to, work with CBC and have an acquisition, but then also be featured in the festivals that they were really excited about.
Also check the digital premiere policy, because in the pandemic there were a lot of digital or hybrid festivals, and some festivals are remaining that way, and others are going fully in person. And so you want to make sure that your film hasn't played anywhere digitally. Sometimes it's okay, but that festival needs to be geo-blocked so that it's only available in a very limited area, so the festival can still premiere it in a certain way. Check that out, because that's been a tricky area as we're getting more in person.
So that was kind of my question, was asking about, if somebody's made a film and if they've put it on their website or put it briefly on TikTok, and then what are the chances that you would take it at a festival or on CBC Reflections?
I can say for Canadian Reflections, we definitely asked for that broadcast premiere and that linear premiere and that exclusivity for a year. So for us, it's built into our contracts. It's not something that we can really waiver on. We do want that right for that first year.
We're probably not going to accept it. There's always one or two exceptions, but sometimes those exceptions are for already established filmmakers that we have a previous relationship with, or people that just truly did not know and are able to remove it in a certain timely manner.
We won't take it either.
I feel like, to be safe, if you want to put something on your website and you know that you want to be in the festival circuit, I always have just a very brief clip. It's like a teaser or a trailer or something, and that's okay, right, to do that? Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Hi, ladies. I have a comment and a quick question based on what she just said. If you produce a film in 2020 and you do a re-edit for 2023, does it make it eligible if it hasn't done a film festival run before?
For us, it wouldn't be. We're really limited. Well, have you submitted it to that festival before?
No, but it hasn't been submitted to any festivals. It was just produced in 2020, like I said, but that was COVID.
Okay, for us, that might be a quick committee meeting in our submissions, just to check, because we're also sensitive to the fact that the last few years have been extremely weird for production, and things have started and stopped, and so we want to be considerate of all of those strange things that have happened to films and in film production. So I think if it hasn't been submitted to us, because what we won't do is resubmit. You can't resubmit something once we've seen it unless it's a completely different version, and even then only sometimes. But if you haven't submitted it to us and you've done a re-edit because of the pandemic, then we would actually consider it.
I think for us, it's really about the production year. So that's a little bit more challenging. I would like to be as open as possible, so it's a conversation if you were interested in submitting to Canadian Reflections that we could have. But, I think just given the pandemic, there are conversations to be had, but for the most part, we're pretty hard on our production year being 2 years or newer.
We would consider it. COVID has just been so hard for filmmakers. Yeah, we would consider it.
And I guess a second comment I had is, when it comes down to telefilm funding, what I've realized is you have to be very intentional about what film festivals you apply to, because there's a whole bunch of film festivals that will make you ineligible for telefilm funding. So, I would suggest that we check out what film festivals are eligible. So if you plan to use a film to try to get some funding for your next project. You just want to make sure that you have hit some of the markers that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Are there any final thoughts that anyone up here on the panel wants to give to any filmmakers or programmers about shorts?
I can start. I know it's been said so many times already, but I think networking and relationship building is just so important. I'm sure so many of us have, had an opportunity to see a film that didn't necessarily work for us at the time, but just understanding where the creative came from, building those relationships are so helpful. Like you said, you never know who you're gonna meet in 5 years. And, I have had people come to me who I wasn't able to acquire their film, but, we've got a great relationship and I understand their vision and trajectory. And I'm able to support them in other ways, like providing letter of interest, which have like no financial obligation for me or the CBC, but will potentially open up funding elsewhere. So yeah, I think, network, make connections, and be kind.
I feel like that's a great way to end. That's a great thought to end this on. Thanks everybody for coming out, and thank you on the panel, and thanks James.
I'll just remind you, if you would like to stay for the 1 p.m. screening, just speak to someone at the desk outside. We'll get you a free ticket. So thanks again. Thanks for being here.